The draft is over. A lot of talk about the teams at the top. Well, those teams aren't very good. What about the teams at the bottom that are good? Are they still good? Will they get better? We'll talk about it today on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
That's right. It's your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen. Kevin Ostricher joins me as usual as riding shotgun and my co-host here from Locked On Ravens. It is Tuesday, so you get KO here. And I am Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast that you can find wherever you get your podcast, whether you watch or listen. Make sure you tap in. Do not miss an episode like the one today, which is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. There's a mouthful, but it is absolutely worth it. We got a mouthful for you today. This is where we're going to end up. We're going to let Kevin talk about those Ravens and what they did in the draft. And then we got clips, obviously, from everyone else. The Broncos, they look to keep up with the top of the AFC. The Giants and the 49ers, two teams in two different positions. Both of them, one's down, the other one seems to be going down, but we'll talk about the impact that they added in the draft. At least the Giants looked like they were trying to swing for the fences a little bit. But we're going to start at the top, which was actually the bottom of the draft with the Eagles and the Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs had Patrick Mahomes running for his life in the Super Bowl, KO, and they went looking for some help on the offensive line.
Yeah, they did. You know, it felt like this Wig was one of the more telegraphed picks in this draft leading up to it, where everybody knew the Chiefs wanted offensive line, and everybody kind of felt like it was going to be Josh Simmons if it was a pick at offensive line, and he fell to Kansas City. Now, they actually were able to trade back and still get him at 32 because Philly wanted a guy at 31, right. And we'll get to that. But look, if Simmons didn't get injured, he would have been a top 15 player in this class and arguably maybe the best offensive lineman, even better than Will Campbell, who went 4 to New England.
Yeah, it could have been top
class.
5, right.
So
right.
To me, I think that it's a great value pick for Kansas City. Obviously, the medicals have to check out, and, you know, even if he's not ready for week 1, I think it's still a worthy investment for the Chiefs, even if he's able to come back mid-year. But then Kansas City just kind of, you know, lets guys fall to their lap here. I thought Omar Norman Lott was one of the better defensive linemen in this class. And of course, you know, second round, I thought he would go mid-second. Kansas City gets him at the back end of the second round. Yep. I thought, you know, other guys like a Jalen Royals, who they got in the 4th round, he was the guy that I had as like a 3rd round wide receiver. Of course, he just, you know, falls into Casey's lap, and they end up taking him as well. So I was very impressed. And, you know, as someone who covers the Ravens, obviously a team that's trying to catch up to Kansas City in the AFC, you know, Kansas City did have a good draft. I'm not just going to say, Kansas City, they didn't have. No, they did. I thought that even some of their later round picks, like Jeffrey Boss out of Oregon, like that's a solid special teamer that can maybe come in and contribute for you a little bit. Now, Kansas City's linebacker group is deep, but at the end of the day, even a guy like Noah Williams, who they took in the 3rd round, and he ascended, I thought Kansas City did a really good job.
They did a good job. And see, it's very important because they've been winning so long. People think they're old. They're not. They're not old at all. Creed Humphrey, I mean, what was Creed Humphrey? He was taken not too long ago. That's why they had to do Smith, the guard, in the offseason. He was a 6th round pick. And I believe in the same draft, they got Creed Humphrey, but they got an extra year before they have to do anything with him. They're not old. Patrick Mahomes is still a very young player, right? It's just they seem old because Chris Jones is towards the end of his career, and Andy Reid has done this forever. But as long as they continue to let guys fall to them and they continue to draft well, Kansas City is going to always be there. And this is going to be a little bit of a different type of run from the Chiefs that we've seen from some other dynasties, because they're not old when they're already in a position where old teams that win a lot, they're there right now, and they still got a lot of guys in their late 20s. Let's listen to Locked On Chiefs talk about the draft selection.
With the 32nd pick The Kansas City Chiefs select Josh Simmons, offensive lineman, Ohio State, presented by LinkedIn. Here to break this down with me is Chris Clark, one of the hosts over at Locked On Chiefs. And Chris, the Chiefs moved back in order to select Josh Simmons. The Eagles really wanted Jihad Campbell, so they made that one pick swap. And the Chiefs, they got their guy. Felt like this was a telegraph pick all the way through. Kansas City, we know, needed offensive line help. How are you feeling about the pick?
I feel great. The reality is he's not there if he doesn't get injured. So could be maybe the best offensive tackle in the class. Fantastic tape out of Ohio State, going up against great competition. So I think you have to feel really good about it if you're the Chiefs. And the fact that they have signed off on the medical means that they feel comfortable with where he is. The great thing about all of this is worst comes to worst and he's not able to start week 1. They already went out and got somebody. So you're still protected at that point. Obviously not what you want with your first round pick if you can't play, but this could be a redshirt year. Not thinking that it will be, but we'll see.
Fifth-year option, very important at the back end of the first round for these teams. He mentioned the Eagles. And you're sitting there wondering in the draft, what are they going to do? They're going to draft the defensive player, and he's going to be from the SEC, and he's going to either be from Alabama or Georgia. They keep doing the same thing. My man, Howie Roseman, is trying to make sure the Eagles do not ever fall off, and they got a guy that a lot of people had in the top 15. I'm going to play this clip first for Louis at Locked On Eagles, and then me and you will come back and chop it up. KO, check out Louis DiBiase.
Every single play that I watched this weekend, I kept asking myself, where the hell is Jihad Campbell? I had to keep my eyes before pre-snap, I'm looking for number 11 because he's lining up somewhere different. I can't just say, oh, there he is. He's middle linebacker. Sometimes he's on the edge. Then he's on the other side of the edge. He's playing. He's like overhanging in the slot. That's so exciting to me. And it's, again, a continuous evolution of Howie Roseman's GM game. Like, he has never brought somebody in like this before, and he's trying to evolve this Eagles roster, get different types of players, stay up to date with what the NFL is requiring of your personnel. Like, the NFL right now, with how versatile and explosive offensive weapons are, you need guys like Jihad Campbell. I mean, Howie Roseman said it over and over again this weekend. He kept talking about range and speed on the second level of the defense, like wingspan, speed, range, tackling. You need those kind of guys, and you have a lot of them now.
Jihad Campbell is a combination of a whole bunch of different people. It's like if you took Hassan Riddick and you took him and took a little piece of Zach Bond and you put him in a lab and you come out with Jihad Campbell, right? So what I'm thinking the Eagles are doing is taking the BPA, the best player available on the board, but they're also looking at it like this. Kobe Dean was a 4th round pick. He gets hurt a little bit a lot. Might have to make a decision within a year. How about we just onboard this really good player who can be a Sam linebacker or an off the ball linebacker right in the middle next to Zach Bond for the future? I think the Eagles are setting themselves up to be really, really good for a long time on defense.
I think so too. And Philly, just again, is one of those teams that they're in that same breath. Philly, Baltimore, Kansas City, those teams at the bottom that you mentioned. Why are teams at the top picking at the top?
Come on.
Because they don't know how to draft sometimes.
Yep.
Why are the teams at the bottom picking at the bottom? Because they understand meeting need with value, best player available, and looking not just for that year, but 5 years into the future with a lot of these picks. So Philly, of course, Howie Roseman does a really good job over there. And I think for Eagles defense that did lose pieces this offseason, they needed to get back some of that. And I think that Jihad Campbell certainly brings you that. Plus, I mean, outside of Campbell, I thought Andrew Cooper was a really solid fit for them after losing Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and, in their secondary also losing Darius Slay. So they're able to get in a guy to hopefully replace that production or at least live up to some of that production. And I thought Ty Robinson was one of the steals of this draft at number 111 in the 4th round. That D-line class, Wig, it was stacked. And so you got guys falling who should have been 2nd or 3rd round picks into the 4th round, which I thought Ty Robinson was. And of course, Philly just kind of does their thing and lets Ty Robinson fall a little bit, and then they scoop him up. So it was a really good draft for Philly, and they have really good shot to repeat this past year.
You ever seen the Dave Chappelle skit when he acts like Rick James? Have you ever seen it?
No, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, well, he's doing something like this in one of those motions, right? He's in slow motion and he's saying that's how it looks like these really good teams are talking to those players at the draft. Man. It's like, come on down, baby. Come on. See, the thing about this is he doesn't have to start. These dudes don't have to start right away. Good teams that play in the Super Bowl, they don't have a whole bunch of holes, man, unless they were created because of free agency and because of everybody trying to pay the champs, right? But in this particular situation, no, man, they're just going to find guys that fit what they do, and they're going to plug and play. And you notice all of Philly's free agency money or veteran money, most of that is on offense. Quarterback, I think Louis said earlier last week at some point, they got like every one of their offensive linemen is in the top 6 of this position in the league in terms of pay, AP annual per year, APY. But then you also have 10 starters, including the running back, both receivers, the tight end, the quarterback. They all get paid. This is why what they did was they focused most of their draft capital on defense. This is the cheaper side. This is the side where they're not spending a whole bunch of money, but this is probably their best side because they keep getting talented players at the end of the draft, and nobody will learn to stop letting them be able to do it. All right, here's what we're going to discuss. We're going to discuss those New York Giants and then the San Francisco 49ers with a pretty solid effort. We'll talk about them and get to that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop managing your money and start building wealth. Surprise Insights is, in my opinion, the most important thing. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money and use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. The code is LOCKEDONNFL, all one word, for half off your first year. All right, rolling along here with my guest today, Kevin Ostricher. I am Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. KO, of course, is Locked On Ravens. We're going to let him give you the spill on the Ravens and all the stuff that they got going on, but we'll hit that in just a little bit. But first and foremost, I'm going to get to the Giants. We talked a lot about Cleveland. We talked about Jaguars because we had to talk winners and losers yesterday. We skipped right past the New York Giants and didn't really focus on the fact that they used 2 first-round picks on players. They got their quarterback of the future in Jackson Dart, while everybody thought they were going to get Shador. He even left. He visited him not long ago, and with him and Malik Neighbors, he left with some giant cleats and all of that stuff, but it's a no-go, man. Here's Patricia Traina talking about the Giants draft choices.
We talk about what the Giants have to show in order for Dable and Shane to retain their jobs. They have to show progress. They have to be better by week 18 than they were in week 1. So getting back to the draft, this year's draft, basically they have set it up to fulfill what Joe Shane said he wanted to do when building up the roster, which is draft, develop, and retain. And again, looking back over the years, they've drafted, yes, because the draft is every year. But can we honestly say they fully developed guys other than maybe Dexter Lawrence, other than maybe Andrew Thomas, and maybe, a few other guys? No, I don't think we could say that, at least until, last year's class came in. They retained a lot of guys that have come through the doors. No. Okay. With the exception of, again, Dexter Lawrence, with the exception of Andrew Thomas and Darius Slayton, 3 guys who, by the way, were drafted by the previous GM. So now you want to see the Giants move forward. All right. Those 3 guys that I just mentioned, they are the last remaining guys from the previous regime. This is Joe Shane's team and Brian Dable's team. So now it is time for these guys that they are bringing in to start blending together and taking this franchise upward.
KO, let me ask you a question. The Giants did what they were supposed to do at 3. They took maybe one of the 2 or 3. I think one of the 2 best players in the draft, maybe 3 if you include Ashton Genty and Travis Hunter. The Giants did what they should have done fiscally for the team, best player available. Then they come back and they do something that's not going to benefit Joe Shane and Brian Daboll if they don't win enough games this year. But they did the infrastructure thing. But even though it's at a quarterback position, they still looked out for the organization as opposed to saying, okay, we'll get Luther Burden III to help us try to save our job. No, they pretty much took a dude that ain't going to play for them this year, and they better hope they win enough games.
Yeah, and I always feel weird, and we've talked about the Giants together, Wig. I think Brian Daboll should have been fired 2 years ago, but he is still on the team. And if this is Brian Daboll's last season, you're right. Jackson Dart is not going to play for the Giants this year unless something absolutely crazy happens. But is this hey, we believe in Jackson Dart and that's a Brian Daboll thing, or is it an organizational thing? I think that's the big question here. I mean, I personally loved what the Giants did for the most part here. I wasn't a huge fan of that pick because I do think there were other players available. Look, the Giants aren't going to win the Super Bowl this year, Wick. I think we both know that. Mm-hmm. But I still think that my thing is you look at all the QB coach combos in this league, it's something that we've talked about before. It's teams drafting quarterbacks. If Brian Daboll gets fired this upcoming offseason, a new coach comes in and says, you know what? I don't really like what Jackson Dart brings to the table. Then you wasted an asset. You wasted trading up. And Jackson Dart is in a situation that's not good for him, and that's unfair to Jackson Dart. And that's just the way it goes in the league. It's unfortunate, but I think we've seen an uptick in that over the last handful of seasons where, I think one of the big examples, if I just want to bring one up, is Josh Rosen, where, he gets drafted by an old regime with a very early first-round pick. A new regime comes in, all of a sudden they have the first overall pick, and they're like, oh, Josh is our guy. And then what happens? He gets traded away. Like, it's just, to me, if there's uncertainty, committing to a quarterback like that is not in my best interest. But you know what? We know he's not going to play this season. We know the Giants aren't going to win a Super Bowl. So I just hope that, again, if it doesn't go well, which I hope it does for them, but if it doesn't go well, I hope that Jackson Dart gets a fair chance with whoever comes in next.
I hope he does too. Another team that had to get busy in the draft, adding to what for a long time looked like an all-star roster on both sides of the ball. And now you really look at it closer, and there's a team on here that needs a whole bunch of stuff. One of them is the San Francisco 49ers, and we'll discuss 49ers today. This is Locked On Bulldogs, Locked On Dogs from University of Georgia, talking about the pick of the San Francisco 49ers.
Mikel Williams is going to be the absolute steal of this NFL draft. Daniel Monroe from Locked On Bulldogs here to tell you why this is a former projected number 1 overall pick. A guy, Mikel Williams, tons of talent, tons of upside. If your team just drafted him, I promise you got him lower than you would have because of some injuries that he sustained last year. It's not that he had an unproductive year or that his performance fell off. It's that he was injured for several games. It hurt his draft stock. There's no long-term injury fears. And so all you're getting is a guy who can absolutely come off the edge with a vengeance, rush the passer, stand up against the run, set an edge if he needs to in a defensive scheme. He can play with his hand on the ground. He can play with his hand off the ground. He's versatile. He can do a ton of things for you. And he's going to be another dynamic playmaker pass rusher on the defensive line coming out of Georgia. If you just drafted Mikel Williams, your team got a good one.
I agree with that assessment. That kid can play, man. He got those long arms and he's built like Trayvon Walker. The 49ers have tried with Chase Young. They've tried with Randy Gregory. They've tried for a long time, but now they finally got a dude that on the field looks and kind of plays just like Aldon Smith.
Yeah, this is an exciting pick. I liked this a lot. And I know that there was a pretty wide range of where Mikel Williams could have fallen in this class. Actually, in our Locked On mock draft, I wanted to take him, and Louis traded up 1 pick ahead of me to do it. So I should have capitalized, but I love this pick for San Francisco. Again, it was a rough year injury-wise for the 49ers, and, they're much better than their record last year indicates. And I think when you're in a situation like that, in, just me covering the Ravens wig, Baltimore's had a couple of years like this where they are contenders when they're healthy, but they'll have a down year, which will put them into the top half of the draft. And in those moments, you have to capitalize. And if you do it right, you can come back with a vengeance. So I like this pick for San Francisco. I think he gives them a lot to the table.
I like how you emphasize if you do it right. I like how you got busy with it, man, because you are exactly right. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about the Denver Broncos, give the boys at Locked On Broncos a chance to talk about whether or not, well, they're going to talk about their draft pick. We'll discuss whether or not it's enough to take them to the next level. And then I'll do what I always tell Kevin we don't do. When you're here, I'm going to let you talk about your Ravens. That's right. The Baltimore Ravens are another one of those teams that just sit there and do this. They just come on, fall to me, baby. And it happened again. It actually happened twice, in my opinion. We'll discuss that more here on Locked On NFL. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. These NBA playoffs are good, man, and they are rolling right now. And FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. I don't know if y'all seen that Denver Nuggets series with those Clippers, but it looks like the Clippers got something to say about that. And the Lakers are in trouble again as Ant-Man tries to send them home early. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Kevin Ostricher and Tony Wiggins here, rolling along on the third segment of Locked On NFL on the Tuesday after the draft. Let's talk about those Denver Broncos, man. The Denver Broncos surprised a lot of people, including yours truly, because they just had a bunch of nondescript players coming into the year, and I wasn't sold on Bo Nix. Good thing that being good doesn't mean you have to sell me in order to be good, because they did not sell me, and they were good, and I looked like a fool, and I had to apologize to Sean Payton a few times. Listen to the guys from Locked On Broncos talk about the results of their draft and what it means for their team moving forward.
With the number 20 selection, the Denver Broncos select Jade Baron, cornerback from Texas, presented by LinkedIn. Here to talk about this with me, break it all down, it's Sayer Bedinger, one of the hosts over at Locked On Broncos. And Sayer, plenty of ways Denver could have gone with this pick. Now, we know Denver's defense was dominant last season. They add to it Pat Surtain, Riley Moss, now Jade Baron added into the fold. How do you like the pick, and how do you like the fit?
Well, really excited about the pick because felt like outside of Travis Hunter, this was the best corner in the draft. And we know the Denver Broncos and George Paton, since his first draft with the team, they love taking corners high. It's not the first time fans have been upset with George for taking a corner over some more coveted Ohio State offensive players, which he did with Pat Surtain when Justin Fields was still on the board back in 2021. So love the player, very versatile, love the fit because I feel like he can slot right into that nickel corner position with Pat Surtain and Riley Moss on the outside.
Listen, there were two picks in this draft. Well, three. One of them was the Travis Hunter trade and that pick. One of them was the Baltimore Ravens pick and Malachi Starks. The other one was this one right here. Well, I made that ugly face. I went, ooh, because it was so ridiculously perfect. And I was like, oh, that's nasty. And I thought about the Denver's defense. And the last thing I thought they needed was a corner. And then they go get what I think is another version of Aeneas Williams here. And I'm thinking, like, that's about all everybody needed, is for that defense to get that dude. He fits perfectly, Kevin. I had to make the stinky face like, oh, that's nasty.
Yeah, and I said it there when talking with Sarah on draft night. Pat Surtain, Riley Moss, Jade Baron all in the same secondary is disgusting. Like disgusting. That is, I don't even think that should be allowed. But you know what? The AFC has to deal with it, and the NFL has to deal with it. And I know a lot of people were thinking about running back for Denver. You know, I know that there were people who wanted them to trade up for Genty, who obviously went at 6. Maybe Marion Hampton would have been a fit there. He won a couple picks later to the Chargers. But when you have opportunities, and look, this is how good teams stay good. When there is a good ball player in front of you, you take the talent and you figure it all out later. You figure out the rest later. And that is exactly what Denver did here. They were able to get RJ Harvey in the second round, so they still got a running back. And I think that you win in every direction there, where if you take Hampton at 20, there is not nearly as good of a corner as Jade Baron on the board when you pick again in the second round. Not that I think that Harvey is better than Hampton, but I think there's definitely less of a drop-off between Hampton and Harvey compared to Jade Baron in the next best corner when they picked. I think they picked at 51, if I'm not mistaken, or 57, somewhere along those lines. So I think that this was a perfect pick for Denver, and I know that some people don't like it. I personally really do like it.
I love the pick. I love the pick because sometimes you just got to make an elite unit super elite. It kind of reminds you of Jalen Carter going to Philadelphia. That's what it does. It reminds you of that because it's like that defense was too good last year. And outside of Travis Hunter, Jade Baron is my favorite corner in this draft because he's tough, he's hard-nosed, he does a whole bunch of stuff. He felt like a Detroit Lion type player, and they messed around and got him right now. All right, Kevin. I talked about the Jaguars yesterday. Let's talk about the Ravens because I just mentioned them. They got a good player, Malachi Starks, who, I mean, it's almost like Ozzie Newsome came back and said, we got to go get one of our guys from the SEC. And that's exactly what they did, man. And when you try to figure out schemes specifically where he plays, it does not matter because he's going to be playing with Kyle Hamilton. I just think it's another one of those, ooh, God, that's a nasty pick.
Yeah, they let talent fall to him, and that's exactly what they did here, where it was apparent that they needed a safety, but they also gave themselves the freedom to not need to pigeonhole themselves into taking a certain position. Whoever fell was going to fall. And, there were rumblings that maybe they liked Tyler Booker. He obviously went far too early for them as he went to Dallas at 12. But they loved Malachi Starks. They ended up classifying him as a Red Star player, which essentially means that he aced all of their interviews. He was they grade in scores of 7. He 7s across the board. Super instinctive player, high football IQ, very smart person. And I think that for Malachi, he's going to free up Kyle Hamilton to do his Kyle Hamilton thing, where last year, Marcus Williams was terrible for them. Eddie Jackson was terrible both on and off the field. Marcus Williams handled it with class. Eddie Jackson did not. So, they were down 2 safeties last year, and out of necessity, they had to do a last-ditch effort and move Kyle Hamilton to the deep end. And he played well there. The Ravens defense rebounded, but Hamilton in this Ravens defense isn't their best when he can be a free-flowing player and move around. Starks has versatility. He can fit in the slot. He can fit in the deep part of the field. The ball skills are there, which is really valuable to them. And he's good in run support too. Sometimes he'll get, tricked out by trick plays or, whatever it may be. Like he's someone that, might get a little confused. But at the end of the day, I think that's something that is coachable and fixable. So when you have those trick plays coming your way and misdirections, end arounds, it's just about discipline. And I think he's still a very disciplined player. But again, at the NFL level, it is different.
Yeah, it is a little bit different, but he's a Baltimore type dude. And if you ask me, I would have never thought he would have fallen to them throughout this process. I think because he ran a 10th of a 10th of a second? Not even a 10th of a second. Is one. If he'd have run a 4.49 instead of a 4.5 flat or whatever, folks would have just looked at it as a 4.49. It's just funny to me how they use that little 100th of a second to push guys back down, man. I'm telling you, it's wild. Check out Locked On NFL Scouting. It's still a good time to get smart about the league, especially before you start doing all your fantasy drafts and all of that. Joe Marino and Kyle Krabs do a really good job of explaining all the personnel from each team to you and what they can offer. Make sure you check that out on Locked On NFL Scouting. Kevin Ostricher, you can find him with Locked On Ravens, Locked On Squad Shows, Locked On everything that we do around here because he's all over the place. And you can find me on Locked On Jaguars as well. And right here tomorrow, riding shotgun, the title rolling, the Madman will come on in the morning, and then I'll slide back in the afternoon with another Locked On Afternoon NFL show. For Kevin Ostricher, for Tony Wiggins, thank you for spending 29 minutes with us today. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time here on Locked On NFL.